startups begin in communities across the country.
Why does Silicon Valley get so much credit? My name is Nick Kastner.
And I'm Caitlin Clays. We're interviewing the people building startup communities across America.
But in the areas no one is talking about, the middle.
This is the Ecosystem Builder Podcast by mug.news.
This is Nick Kastner interviewing Brienne Maner. Brienne is an ecosystem builder from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
Yes, yeah, it is great to connect with another ecosystem builder close by from Sioux Falls, based out of Omaha. So
yeah, been there a few times. It's a nice little jaunt from Sioux Falls. You can do it in a day, which I appreciate. And you have Trader Joe's, which I am jealous of.
I was actually at Trader Joe's last night.
Oh man, can you pick some stuff up for me, please?
Yes, and we can either meet halfway in the middle, or I'll ship it to you. But we'll get the logistics worked out.
That's not a bad startup concept, right? Like, bring me my Trader Joe's.
I think you're onto something. So I'll take the idea and do some firsthand research. Ask some people not in the Trader Joe's area.
Perfect.
Yes.
So, love it.
Yes. Yeah. How did you first get involved in the Sioux Falls startup community?
Yeah. So I didn't necessarily see myself falling into the startup community, but I was asked to apply for the position at Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship, which meant a whole lot to me. I lived in Sioux Falls most of my life, and my background is in marketing and communication mostly. So my career started at Sesame Street Live in Minneapolis.
Wow.
The day. I'm not going to say when I worked there to age myself out, but that's where I started my career. But Sioux Falls has always felt like home to me, and I knew I always wanted to come back and plant my roots, and I did. And I worked for a few startups along the way. I worked for Electric Pulp, which is a website agency, DataSync, which actually incubated out of the facility that I am now running. So I think I didn't realize like my path was leading me to this position. And prior to working for Zeal, I worked for 8 years at Downtown Sioux Falls Incorporated, which is our downtown organization, which works very closely with the Chamber of Commerce, the city of Sioux Falls, to help build up our city's core. And that's really where I got my chops and my passion for supporting small business and entrepreneurs. We have such a tight-knit community in downtown Sioux Falls, and kind of an unprecedented amount of successful retail happening in downtown Sioux Falls. So I've found that along the way, like creating relationships, I don't have all the answers, but I'm really resourceful, and I've lived here most of my life, so I know how to make the right connections. And that has bode well for me in my position here at Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship now, where I basically am casting a wider net and supporting entrepreneurs and startups across the city and the region in some senses. So it's been a really great transition for me, and I've been so lucky to be in this position for the last year and a half.
Yes, yeah. You obviously just touched on running the Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship, and what exactly is the Zeal Center? Is it a part of the Chamber of Commerce? Is it an organization?
So we're an arm of the Chamber of Commerce. They were one of our original funders. So our facility was built in 2004, known then as the South Dakota Technology Business Center, the SDTBC. And man, oh man, am I so lucky that they rebranded so I don't have to say that. And it's also confusing. You know, when we speak in acronyms, I think people are just like, what are you talking about? So the facility's been around for about 15 years. Its intention was to be an incubator for tech startups. That's how it started. And as things have progressed and as our ecosystem has evolved, we have seen a lot of diversity in the types of startups that have needed support. So while we still support those tech businesses, we have biotech as well. We've got lab space in our lower level, 45,000 square foot facility, by the way. We have seen just tremendous interest in entrepreneurial activity and startups, and that doesn't just includes those traditional entrepreneurial ventures, if you will. I've worked with nonprofits, I've worked with retailers, restaurateurs. We just want to let people know that while you might not identify as entrepreneurial, if you're looking to bring a new idea, a new product or service into the marketplace, you are entrepreneurial, and we want to talk to you and help support you in your ventures along the way. So it's been fantastic, and some really notable businesses have launched out of the Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship, such as DocuTap, which was recently acquired by Xperity, and Meta Payment Systems, which is a subsidiary of MetaBank. So we've had some like really big success, and I'm looking to find that next big startup, but also support all of those little guys along the way, that are looking to get off the ground.
Yes, yeah. Brienne, I love the broad definition of entrepreneurship and what a startup is. That sometimes it seems like communities get too focused in like the high growth tech startup, but there's nonprofit activity and in traditional entrepreneurial activity like retail or brick and mortar is that those people are still entrepreneurs nonetheless.
Yes, absolutely. Or we're trying to find a good balance there, because again, I want to support the next big, tech venture, coming through our community. But at the same time, like, there are so many entrepreneurial people that I want to be able to support. And we talk about new Americans, women, there's like these different subsectors that don't feel like they have a seat at the table. And we want to be all inclusive, to as many people as we possibly can.
Yes, absolutely. So Brienne, I have driven through Sioux Falls. I was thinking beforehand, isn't the Corn Palace close to Sioux Falls?
It is. It's an hour west in Mitchell, South Dakota.
Okay.
And I've been there a few times.
Yeah, so I've for sure been in the Corn Palace. So I've been to the I guess surrounding area of Sioux Falls. But someone who has not been to Sioux Falls, what's something about the startup ecosystem there that may surprise us?
Yeah. So there's one of my colleagues has penned our part of the world flyover country. Okay. Which isn't what it seems like. You fly over Sioux Falls to get to Rapid City and go to Mount Rushmore, to the Corn Palace or whatever. But you would be surprised at how vibrant our entrepreneurial community is here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I'll keep bragging about downtown Sioux Falls specifically because it feels big city. It has its own look and feel. It's the people that are making it what it is, but it's a lot of my colleagues, people that I graduated high school with, that are starting these wonderful restaurants. They have these unique concepts for bars and retail, and it's this mecca within kind of a I don't want to call it a desolate area. We're big, but we're small, here in South Dakota. But we're this hot spot in the state. Ooh, I used the wrong word. Hot spot isn't a good word to use right now during the pandemic.
Definitely not.
Hot spot for business. But it really is. It's vibrant and it feels big city. As someone who lived in Minneapolis for a few years, we have all of the conveniences of a Minneapolis, but we don't have to deal with the traffic and the parking and all of those costs that come with living in a big city, which is to our advantage.
Yes, yeah, and it's also interesting that like across the country, downtowns in smaller communities have been struggling. So it is you hear that in Sioux Falls, it's still the
and
place for the city.
Not to say that we're not struggling right now. I think everyone across the country is struggling right now due to the pandemic, but we have seen such innovation and resiliency from so many of our small businesses, and watching the community wrap their arms around these folks, including us. So we've developed a relationship with the Co-Starters platform, if you're familiar with it. Mm-hmm. An accelerator. It's an accelerator in a box, if you will, but they have this offshoot program called Rebuild, which is specifically designed to help businesses that have been affected by COVID, to help them pivot, to give them, resources and encouragement to keep going. And we as a community, so Zeal, the downtown organization and the chamber, sent through 10 businesses on scholarship to go through this program. And we're going through it right now. And it is so powerful to hear the stories from these business owners, from their mouths, like all the struggles, but all the hope that they have for the future. Like, they're not giving up. And that's what entrepreneurialism is this, you have to have grit and you have to be able to pivot when times get tough, because things are changing. Our landscape is changing. I don't know what the world is going to look like post-COVID, but I know that it's going to be different. And this is when the greatest innovations are born out of an economic recession. So I'm excited to see what happens.
Yes, yeah. I was just going to bring up that point that economic recessions have traditionally been a time that entrepreneurs flourish, or entrepreneurs flourish. So
Yep,
it is great to hear that sense of resiliency is taking place in Sioux Falls.
absolutely.
Yeah. So if I was starting a business in Sioux Falls, are there any local grants or interest-free loans that the Zeal Center the Zeal Center provides to entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
or if not from the Zeal Center, from a different organization?
So something unique about the Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship is that the SBA, the SBDC, and our Governor's Office of Economic Development are all located in our facility.
Hmm.
In a sense, we are a one-stop shop for entrepreneurs and small businesses. We don't specifically have funds earmarked because we work in tandem with these other organizations that do that work. It's really important to me specifically to make sure that we're not um, duplicating services. We want to find where the gaps are and fill those, but then work in tandem with those folks that are good at what they do and help lift them up. Again, I come from a background of connecting. My LinkedIn profile speaks for itself. I've got a lot of connections because I know that I don't have all the answers, right? So we work very closely with the SBA, the SBDC, and the governor's office to make sure we're abreast of all of those opportunities and that we're able to connect entrepreneurs when they come in. It's so crazy to see how overwhelming it can be for someone to come in and they just don't know where to start, and it might not be funding that they need first, but that's why we exist. So we can kind of unravel that hairball that is entrepreneurship. It's overwhelming and there's so many different points to entry. And it's really important that we are the umbrella over the ecosystem, if you will, and we know who all the players are and we can plug in play just depending on who they are and what they need.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Having that strong network and then being able to leverage it is incredibly valuable. So it's good to hear you are like right on
Yeah.
point on that front.
And we've got connections to VCs as well. I just wanted to mention that too. We've got, we know who the funders are in the area, and that's also not to say that eventually we won't have our own sources of funding. I'm on a year and a half into this position, and I'm still trying to figure out like where we fill those gaps. So definitely something to consider. And we glean information from other ecosystems such as Omaha, Fargo, like our Midwest community is so strong. And it's been so great to be able to work with folks and know that they're not territorial about their information. They're happy to help because we're in this together. We're the Silicon Prairie, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Cool.
I love it. What you just brought up venture capital. What is the venture capital scene like in Sioux Falls?
Yeah, we are well funded. I'll tell you that. I think the issue is that we are not always able to find the right startups. That's the issue that I've seen since I've started here is where are these people? Where is the next DocuTap? And how do we properly engage with those folks? And do we need to start presenting problems that need to be solved? I've just heard about the concept of reverse pitch night, where you bring a corporation to the table and they present the issue that they have in their business, and they throw money at it to be solved. So I just wonder about that. We've got plenty of funding. There's some great angel investors in our area, the Falls Angel Fund. Matt Paulson is a part of that, who also sits on my board of directors, which is the one I'm probably the most connected to. But there are a lot of private investors out there too that are just waiting to see, what's the next big thing that I need to invest in. And we also work very closely with the Enterprise Institute, which puts together this South Dakota Innovation Expo each year. And that's where the suits and the shirts connect, if you will. We bring those startups to the table with the VCs and help them mix together and either refine their pitches or make connections. And we see real strong transactions happen from these types of events. So yeah, we've definitely got a strong VC network in South Dakota.
Yes, yeah, and if Trader Joe's ever does that reverse pitch competition, I
Man,
will, yeah, I will show up just to hear the logistics idea and then hop right on it.
count me in as well.
Yes, all right, perfect. Sounds like we have a partnership for when the time comes, Brian.
Love it.
Yes, yeah. Um, where do entrepreneurs hang out at in Sioux Falls? Are there coffee shops or co-working spaces or anything like that?
So that's been interesting, and that's a discussion that we've been having at the board level. Our facility has about 7,000 square foot of co-working space, which we were granted through an EDA lease. So we have co-working space at Zeal, but the location that we are in, I think, hinders us from that organic activity that we'd really like to see, that we do see at coffee shops in downtown Sioux Falls. So when I think about co-working space and where things are really happening and where the conversations are happening, it's Queen City Bakery in downtown Sioux Falls, Josiah's, these places where folks go and you run into, like, I always equate it to like walking into your LinkedIn profile. You walk into one of those places and you see 10 people, and you want to talk to all of them. And it just creates this energy and it makes you feel this sense of like, I spent a really good hour of my day because I went to Josiah's today. And that's the kind of feel that we want in our facility. And our location is hindering us because we're located on the northwest side of Sioux Falls. We're off the interstate, but we're kind of away from the action, if you will. So we really are focused on having more of a downtown presence because that's where the action is. That's where things are really happening.
Yes, yeah. But it is good to hear that those interactions are still happening someplace in
Yes.
town, even though if it's not at the Zeal Center.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to happen within our walls for us to be involved. Like you said, we're an ecosystem organization. We're not just a facility, even though the facility is a big part of what we do, and we have to manage that facility as well. So there's a lot of great opportunities there, and also outside of the walls.
Yes, yes. So traditionally, in a pre-COVID world, events were a great opportunity for entrepreneurs to meet one another or meet other people in the community, potential employees or investors. And events in general have obviously been dampered with the current pandemic we're in. But is there a website or some place like that where someone can go learn about how to get more involved in the
Yeah.
small startup community?
Well, events are interesting because I do feel like having to go virtual and utilizing platforms like Zoom have bode well for us in some ways where we've been able to be more flexible and meet entrepreneurs where they're at. We know that a lot of startups and entrepreneurs have day jobs, and this is sometimes a side hustle, and they don't really get to do these focus on these types of things till the evening. So, for example, we just hosted a nonprofit pitch night event on Giving Tuesday. We did it all virtually, and we had 130 people on the call.
Wow.
It's amazing. We gave away cash prizes to the two top pitches. It was just everything about it was wonderful. And I had to say to myself, would it have been this successful if we weren't able to be virtual and host this event at a random hour? I think it was at like 8 p.m. I just wonder if there are some advantages to being able to host virtual events, even though I think we're all craving personal interaction. I think there have been some advantages that I think we can continue to take advantage of moving forward. South by Southwest is having a virtual event this year. I've never been able to attend that event, and I'm pumped that I can spend $150 and get the South by Southwest experience. That's cool. That can change the game.
Yes, absolutely. How did you get the word out about that event? Because 100 people is a feat.
It's significant.
Yes, absolutely.
So when you talked about a website or where can people go to get more information, we have a very active Facebook group here in Sioux Falls that we have renamed. It used to be called the Entrepreneurs of Sioux Falls, and we renamed it Startup Sioux Falls because that's kind of what we are. We're Startup Sioux Falls. So we've got almost 8,000 people in that group. and most of them are from the area. They have to answer a few questions to get in, but we want to know that they're serious about starting a business or they own a business, and there's some rules. But it's such an active group, and it's a great like point of entry. If you're not sure or you don't know what questions to ask, you can kind of poke around in there and troll around, if you will, before you make that next step, which might be contacting our organization and setting up a meeting or having coffee with someone. It's a nice, like, easy way to ease into things. And we know that a lot of these folks have anxiety. Like, some of us are introverts and we don't necessarily want to go to an event with a bunch of people because that's intimidating. So again, because of the fact that the pandemic has hit, I think our introverts have had a chance to shine in a way, that they maybe didn't before. So it's been really interesting to watch. And I'm just trying to see the silver linings in all of this. Like, I didn't know how to use Zoom before this all hit. And now I feel like I'm a Zoom pro. And if I need to go virtual at an event, no problem. Got it.
Yes, absolutely. And that use of the Facebook community
Yep.
group is exactly what Facebook intended. When they were thinking of the product, I'm sure some guy was in a room saying, the communities will be able to pull together all of their like entrepreneurs, and they'll be able to talk and meet each other, and this will change the world. And then
exactly.
yes, and here it is doing that.
Groups is definitely my favorite aspect of Facebook, for sure.
Yes, and the fact that 8,000 people are in that again seems like a high number. I know I'm in the Startup Nebraska Facebook group, and I think that only has like 5,000. So yeah, yes. So Sioux Falls is winning as far as the
cool
number front. So nice job.
Not that it's a competition, but
it's definitely not. So you mentioned the some successful startups from Sioux Falls. Who is the most known entrepreneur coming out of Sioux Falls?
I have to say it's Eric McDonald of DocuTap. He's the name, he's the one that everybody looks to. And I can't say that I've had too many interactions with the guy. He almost seems like this like figment of my imagination, like this, I don't know. But people talk very highly of him. And obviously, like, he had the entrepreneurial dream. He sold off his company and made a bunch of money. That's the intent of every entrepreneur, but it's it's one of the paths to success. So I definitely would say Eric, and I'm assuming people that are tuning into this podcast would know who that was.
Yes, absolutely. Are there any news outlets or blogs or podcasts dedicated to covering startups in Sioux Falls?
I would say the best outlet that we have is, she's an entrepreneur in her own right, but her name is Jody Schwan. And she did, prior to what she's doing now, she worked for the local paper, the Argus Leader, and was the editor of the Business Journal. She went off on her own and she started her own online digital content platform called SiouxFalls.business, which was hatched out of the Zeal Center. She utilized a lot of our services to get off the ground, but she dedicates a lot of her resources towards entrepreneurs, startups, small businesses, and her readership, or her viewership, I guess we want to call it, because she doesn't have a printed publication, is astronomical. It's phenomenal. She's doing incredibly well. She would be another notable entrepreneur in Sioux Falls, if I'm being honest. Everybody knows who she is. She even goes by a first name basis. Like, if you say Jody, they know who you're talking about.
Wow. And what's the name of the website?
SiouxFalls.business.
Okay. Fascinating. It's cool to see entrepreneurship happening on the local journalism level. So
absolutely. Got to stay relevant and innovate. And I still much love to the Argus Leader. Don't get me wrong. It's interesting. You can delineate, the difference between hard news, what journalists are trying to do, which is, ask the hard questions and aren't beholden to their advertisers, and what Jody's doing, which is shining a light on small businesses. I think there's room in the marketplace for both of those things.
Absolutely. And regardless of which type it is, there is a lot of value to highlighting those entrepreneurs and just showcasing them to the broader community. So
absolutely.
Yes, yeah, good to hear it's happening in Sioux Falls. So last question for you, Brienne. If I were to move to Sioux Falls tomorrow and wanted to start a business, what's the very first thing I should do?
you better come out to the Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship. I can't say enough about how passionate myself and my staff are about our city. And again, like, we are connectors. We're not going to have all of the answers for you by any means, but we're a great welcome wagon. We will get you connected as quickly as possible. And I think that's part of the intimidation of entering a new community, is who are the players. You can Google it, but I think you really need to hear it from the insiders, right? Like, it's like when I go visit Omaha, I want to know what the cool restaurants are. I don't want to go to Chick-fil-A. I want to go to the little greasy spoon that everybody's talking about. So I want to go find those people that know the real city. And I feel like that's where we have an advantage as a staff. Myself, Peter Hauk, who's our community manager, he would die for Sioux Falls. He would, I don't know, it's great to have this team of city cheerleaders, if you will, that are really invested in the growth and the vibrancy of our community. And we're specifically invested in small business and entrepreneur activity. So come to Zeal if you ever think about coming to Sioux Falls. And there's some other organizations as well, but we'll tell you who those are.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining me, and I loved learning more about the community.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Come visit us. And I'm coming down for Trader Joe's.
Perfect. Yes. Thanks again.
Now that we've learned about an ecosystem from the person building it, I'm going to link back up with Caitlin to clarify some jargon and take a deeper dive into this community.
What is up, Nick?
Hello, Caitlin. How are ya?
I'm great. How was your interview?
It was really, really good. So South Dakota is one of those states I've driven through a few times, but I honestly have not spent much time there, even though I live in Omaha, so it's not that far away from where I'm at. So it was really good to just sort of understand more about the Sioux Falls community and everything they have going on there.
Yeah, totally. So why don't you tell me your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway. There's been especially I'm from the rural part of the state, as you're from the rural part of the country as well, and downtowns across rural America are really, really struggling. But Brienne's comment about how much the Sioux Falls downtown is thriving really surprised me, and it was also just just good to hear that there are communities with a thriving downtown and retail and all of that still, like, those still exist in today's America. So
Yeah, I actually think, to my own hometown, our downtown is like maybe Subway. That was no, I think that's a great concept to just increase more just traffic in that area, especially in the smaller town rural areas.
yes, absolutely.
So did you have anything that you had to look up afterwards, or anything that you wanted to do more research on or would like to at all?
Yes. So the Ecosystem Builder podcast is now a part of Hurdat Media. My production company was absorbed by this larger media company called Hurdat. And during the interview, Sasha is our editor and head of production. So she was sitting in the room, and she is also from South Dakota. And the coffee shop Brienne mentioned about all the entrepreneurs hanging out in, Sasha, who was off screen, was nodding because she's like, yes, yeah, that is the Hangout. So I definitely had to look that up and just like went on Google just to check out the when it's verified by two people at the same time. I was like, all right, this is definitely the place. Her answer is correct. So.
No, that's awesome. That's cool. I'll have to look that up too. Now I'm curious.
Yes.
So do you have any last parting thoughts? Anything that stood out at all? Anything as we end the episode?
So I was also impressed with the South Dakota has a South Dakota Startups Facebook group, and it was much, much bigger than the Nebraska Facebook group. And it was just cool to see their use of that technology and how they're applying it for good, if you will. So that one, and it surprised me that it was so much larger than the Nebraska Facebook group for startups. But that is That is about it, Caitlin. Do you want to read us out?
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Ecosystem Builder Podcast, which is a product of mug.news and hosted by Nick Kastner and Caitlin Clays. If you have any questions about today's episode, connect with us on Twitter at Nick Kastner, at Clays Creates, or at MugNewsOfficial. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and share with your friends. We release episodes every Wednesday morning, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a beat.
Heck yes. All right, perfect.